welcome to the CSF Alumni webinar going over financial aid. My name is Nicole Serrato. I'm hosting the webinar today. I also work for CSF and I'm also an alumni of the program. So just to explain a little bit about what is the CSF Alumni Network. So CSF gives scholarships for kids K through 8th grade, and after you graduate from 8th grade, you become an alumni of the program. We created this alumni network to continue to provide resources to you and information to help you through the rest of your educational journey. So that's what this panel is about. It's about providing you information on your continued journey. Next, we have the CSF Young Leaders Board and the CSF President's Council. What that is, it consists of young professionals in New York City who volunteer their time and their money to provide guidance to you, to help us help you as alumni. And so the panelists today are a variety from our President's Council and from our Young Leaders Board who are here, who are dedicated to education and who have just a big heart to give their time and help you tonight. So make sure at the end of each of them speaking, if you have any questions for them individually, you'll be able to ask them in the Q&A section. Next, I do want to say that this is a second event in our series, so look out for emails in the future for future events that will be happening over the summer. Lastly, before I introduce the Q&A, the panelist, we are on social media. So if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, please connect with us. I'll go ahead and type in where you can find us on those platforms in the chat. I usually have them up here, but we'd love to connect with you on social media so we can continue spreading the word on what we're doing at CSF to help children's education. Now, the outline format for tonight is we're going to have each panelist speak. There's going to be a couple questions after they speak, and then we're going to have a little bit more than 20 minutes, maybe a half hour, depending on how the flow goes, to ask questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat. If you want to ask them anonymously, you can do that as well. If you want to come on screen and ask the panelist a question personally, then we'd love to have you on screen so we can see your face and they can see your face. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to introduce you to the panelists. First, we have Fausto Jimenez Evans, who graduated from Columbia University with no student loan debt. He has now dedicated his professional career to helping families in New York City identify the best educational opportunities for their children. So we have a really exciting presentation that he's going to go over. Next, we have Michelle. She is a Young Leaders Board member. She works for Geller and Company, and she studied at Binghamton University in upstate New York. We have Shivani, who works at Global Health Corps Incorporated, and she graduated from the New York University. She is a Young Leaders Board member as well. Last but not least, we have Rico Charity, who's a President Council member. He works as an associate at Paul Weiss. He graduated from Virginia Tech and Georgetown University Law Center. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you to the first panelist and have him take over from here. Fausto, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Fausto Jimenez Evans, and I'm an educational consultant. As Nicole had mentioned, I graduated from Columbia University with no debts. And most recently, I actually worked at the College of Mount St. Vincent. I was a director of TRIO Student Support Services. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my presentation. And hope everyone can see it. Okay, excellent. So today we're going to talk about how to pay, essentially how to pay for college. There are several forms of financial aid, federal and private financial aid. They come in three, for the most part, sort of overarching forms. They come in grants and scholarships, which are generally need-based and/or merit-based and do not have to be repaid. They come in work-study funds, which is essentially a work program where you actually work on campus. You have a part-time job, and so you get paid as a student. And so this money is essentially supposed to help you with your living expenses and books expenses. We also have federal and private loans. And so loans meaning that it is borrowed money, meaning that you have to pay it back, and you have to pay it back with interest, meaning that you pay a little bit more than what you originally borrowed. So let's get into grants and scholarships. As I mentioned, grants are usually need-based. They can come from the federal government, they can come from state funds, or they can come from the colleges or the university's own funds. So for example, there's the federal Pell Grant, which every family has to complete the FAFSA form for in order to qualify. And generally, the Pell Grants are for families that are low income or need-based. We also have the New York Tuition Assistance Program, which are grants for New York State residents, and that they are only dispersed to you if you stay in a college, if you're a New York resident who stays in a college in New York State. Then we also have other grants like the FSCOG grant and the Teach Grant. The Teach Grant actually has strict requirements if you want to become a teacher, but that is available as funding for you as well. So scholarships are very similar to grants, and they're usually more merit-based. So you can have different types of scholarships. For example, for art, academic scholarships, of course, you can receive an athletic scholarship specifically from a college or university. They can also come from nonprofit institutions and even from some corporations. So for example, the UNCF or United Negro College Fund, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, the American Indian Graduate Center Graduate Center also has scholarships, and the Asian and Pacific Islander American scholarships are also available. So one of the things that I forgot to mention, excuse me, is that each and every one of those green links, green words that are underlined that you see here are links. And so they're actually linked to more resources. So websites are actually going to give you more resources, or to the nonprofits or the corporations' websites themselves. So applying for scholarships is free. This is something that you have to understand. You do not have to pay anyone to apply for scholarships to you. You should be able to do this on your own. No one should be charging you for anything. Corporations like Coca-Cola, like Target, like McDonald's, like Charter Communications, for example. So if your family uses a cable company, they may actually offer scholarships for college-bound high school seniors if you're a customer. Generally, if you're a customer, there are of course exceptions. And so we also want to think about other scholarship sort of funds from banks, workers unions, credit unions, and other sort of interest groups and affinities. So JP Morgan Chase, for example, has a scholarship. DC 37, which is a union for New York City residents specifically, has a scholarship. And then there's also the New York Credit Union Association, which has a list of scholarships. And so I also included interest and hobbies to a link that will go ahead and take you to a list of scholarships based on particular interests and hobbies, such as art, including drawing, painting, but even other hobbies such as knitting. So work study is, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, offers you a part-time job. And it's generally a program for undergraduate and graduate students with demonstrated financial need. It is a part-time job, so it's not like you're going to have a 9 to 5 while you are also a full-time student. You also, one of my recommendations is to ensure that you are looking for these work study positions early in the semester. So as soon as you get on campus, make sure that you are asking about work study, that someone points you to either the website where the college or the university publishes their work study positions, or if there's a physical site either near HR or even the student center that offers these. So make sure that you apply early, because the funds are limited and the jobs do run out. Another sort of thing to keep in mind is to track your hours and your funds, and to feel free to ask for more if more is needed. Your financial aid officer will go ahead and review your package, and if there's more funds and you can qualify for them, they will most likely disperse them. Loans are a little bit more complicated, and so I included a link to the studentaid.gov website, which is the official government website for federal student aid. So loans, as we talked about, is money that you borrow and therefore also have to pay with interest, meaning with a little bit more money over time. There are several types of loans that can be included in your financial aid package. Generally, the loans, if there are going to be loans on your financial aid package, the preferable loans that you want to see are the subsidized loans, a federal direct subsidized loan, which means that the amount of the loan that is dispersed to you is based on your financial needs. So if your family needs more money, then they'll make sure to grant it to you based on your financial need. One of the things about the subsidized loan to keep in mind is that you do not pay or accrue interest until after you graduate college. Subsidy, so that word subsidize means essentially an assistance or an additional aid. So we, the people of the United States, will make sure to take care of the interest of your loans while you're in school. Another type of loan that you might see on your financial aid package is the unsubsidized loan, which is not necessarily an amount based on your financial need, but which, just like the subsidized loan, is capped at a maximum. And the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized loan is that the unsubsidized loan, the interest actually accrues while you're in college, while you're still studying, as opposed to the subsidized loan. You might also see federal direct plus loans, which means that your parent would be taking out that loan. That if you do not see it in your financial aid package, and at some point during the 4 years or however long your college career takes, your family needs to borrow money on your behalf because perhaps you've maxed out how much you've borrowed, there's the plus loan that is available to families. Then there's consolidation loans, which generally come after you graduate college, and they allow you to combine all of your federal loans into one. And then, there are also private loans. So all of these are federal loans that are given to you from the federal government through the school's financial aid office. Private loans are oftentimes, there may be some information about private loans within the financial aid office, but generally those are loans that are outside loans from banks or other financial institutions. And make sure that you are reading the fine line when you are borrowing private loans. Applying for financial aid. So how do we start doing this? So number one, you have to visit the federal student aid website. Once again, studentaid.gov. You have to apply for your student aid ID, essentially open an account on the website. And then you're going to complete the FAFSA. And I'm sure many of us have heard that term FAFSA over the last few years. And it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Once again, the first and operative word is free application. No one should be charging you. You should not be paying to complete a FAFSA, okay? You can do it yourself. They try to be as clear as possible, and they walk you through each and every single step. And so after you complete your FAFSA, either immediately or a couple of days later, you should receive your student aid report, which is essentially a calculation of how much your family can expect to pay. And so it could be that a college's financial aid will adhere to that and say, okay, fine, this family cannot pay more than this, so we're going to try to package them as well as we possibly can. But it may also be the case that for that college, they may not have the financial aid funds to sort of meet that. And so again, this is why it also becomes important to compare packages, your financial aid packages once you receive them. So this is just sort of to keep in mind. These are essentially all the documents that you're going to need when you're applying for financial aid. So please make sure to have all of these things ready. The student who's applying for financial aid and the parent or guardian's social security number, make sure that the federal income tax returns are complete. So, the 1040s complete with W-2. Some schools ask for W-2s, others don't. And I believe that for the 2021-2022 school application year, families are going to submit their 2019 federal income tax return. So please keep that in mind. Although there are schools that may actually ask you for a few more. So make sure that you also have the 2018 and 2017, in addition to the 2020 federal income tax returns completed. One note to make is that all males between the ages of 18 and 21 and 25 are required to register for selective service in order to receive financial aid. For whatever reason, I think sometimes that was missed with some of my students. And so there was a delay in their processing because they hadn't completed that. I don't know the reasons for that, but you guys can go ahead and look that up. So applying for state and other aid. So we just talked about how to apply for federal financial aid. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, some states, especially New York State, also have grants, financial aid for families. So making sure that as a college senior, you're also completing your tuition assistance program application or TAP. You'll hear that over the next couple of years. Make sure that you are visiting the financial aid websites of each of the college that you are applying to. They may require additional documentation. And for some schools that are private schools, they may actually require an additional form. So in addition to the FAFSA, you have to file something else called the CSS profile, College Scholarship Service Profile. It is not free, but there are fee waivers available. So please make sure that you are asking for them. Apply for New York State awards and scholarships, apply for external scholarships, and make sure that you are completing any loan applications any additional loan applications that you may need. So a few insider tips before I go. This is pretty much one of the only times in your life when you are going to be offered free money, when that's going to be available to you. And when I say free money, essentially what you'll have to do is send in your report card and maybe even write an essay, right, to apply for these scholarships, in addition to completing their applications. Make sure that you are applying to as many scholarships as you possibly can. That's one of the things that I remember from my senior year, is that after I was done with all of my college applications by the end of December, I had concurrently been working on a couple of scholarships, but after that, I made sure to apply to as many scholarships as possible, right? So some of the scholarships have deadlines after the college deadlines, college application deadlines, so that you actually have the time to apply to them, right? So please make sure to do so. Apply early. For scholarships, it's not necessarily first come, first serve, but financial aid does run out. So please make sure that you are completing all of your financial aid requirements as you are completing your college application requirements in the fall semester. Because by the spring semester, if you start applying to colleges, then a lot of the admissions deadlines will already have passed. And even then, a lot of colleges may already have offered seats to students with financial aid packages, and the financial aid money may have run out. Make sure that you're requesting fee waivers for college applications, for the SATs or any other standardized tests that you may need to take, and for the CSS profiles. For families that are considered low-income families, there are fee waivers available. Consider staying in-state. So if you live in New York State, consider staying and going to a college in-state. That means that you will get the TAP grant, right? And then if you decide to go to one of the SUNYs or the CUNYs, there's less tuition. And so your family, the burden on your family, the financial burden, may be lessened. Get to know your financial aid officers at your interested colleges. They are incredibly friendly, and their job is to give away money. as much money as their financial aid budgets allow. Apply to big and reach universities because they often have more funding. Some students think like, oh, I may not get into, for example, Harvard or Columbia, and only apply to other types of schools. And you know what? You may actually get into Harvard or Columbia, and they will have, or even Boston University or one of the SUNYs, right? One of the big SUNYs, and they will make sure they will most probably have a larger financial aid budget. Oh, one note that I actually remembered. Sorry. So one more thing for students who are interested, they should also consider historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, especially during this year. Because of the things that have happened over the last year, there has been sort of a resurgence in understanding how important they are. And so they have received a lot more funding, particularly for financial aid. So please make sure to also consider HBCUs. Go to your financial aid college websites, as I said earlier, and then try to develop financial literacy. I know that sounds kind of like, what are you talking about, Fausto? But watch YouTube, go on Google, like even Wikipedia. But just like, there are a bunch of websites that teach you about budgeting, what compound interest is. That doesn't sound like something important right now, but when you start saving young, it actually makes a difference. What debit and credit is, and what and even the basics of having a checking and a savings account. So once again, there are plenty of resources. Your financial aid college websites will let you know every step that you need to take. Your network. So please make sure to ask your high school guidance counselor any questions that you need. Your first year college student advisors. So your first year, you will probably have either one or two advisors. Make sure that you ask them any sort of financial aid questions because they may be able to help you. Your financial aid officers. And then, again, making sure that you are keeping in mind the government support that is available, such as federally funded programs. So as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, I was a director of TRIO Student Support Services. And so TRIO is a program that exists in undergraduate universities that essentially helps undergraduate students graduate and supports them throughout those 4 years. And then there's a state-funded program like HEOP, Higher Educational Opportunity Programs, which are available at a lot of universities throughout the state. And so with that, I conclude and open the floor up for questions. Thank you so very much for your patience as I was getting through this information. I know that it can be a little bit dry, and I know that I did it as quickly as possible, but please let me know any questions.
Thank you so much, Fausto. That was incredible.
Yes, thank you.
So the first thing I want to say is to everyone who's present, this presentation will be available via email. We'll be sending it out, so you'll have access to all the links that Fausto is sharing. Now we do have a question it's anonymous, so I'm going to ask it on their behalf.
Okay.
When in your senior year of high school, do you have to fill out the FAFSA?
If you are going to be applying to college your senior year of high school, yes, that's when you need to complete the FAFSA. Please make sure that you are checking for the deadlines. And, as I said earlier, make sure that you are doing everything as early as possible. The earlier that you complete the FAFSA means that the earlier your colleges and universities receive it, which means that the earlier that they can make a decision about your financial aid package.
Sounds great. So that's a yes.
Yes.
So, okay, if you can actually stop sharing your screen.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we have another anonymous question. What is a good place to start when I'm researching scholarships? This is a great question because I had a challenge with that as well back in the day.
The best place to start would actually probably be your guidance counselor's office. generally they would have some information. Or if your school has a college counselor, they will have a plethora of information. I remember that my college counselor used to have sort of like a little bookcase with a lot of smaller scholarships. So meaning that the awards were between, you know, $100 to $2,000, but whenever he received something, he would put it on the board, and you can take, you know, he would make copies. You could take an application. I think that, you know, I would start with the scholarship funds. So the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, the United Negro College Fund, as I said earlier, and sort of some of the other affinity or rather like cultural group scholarships. You know, there is scholarship.com and FastWeb. I'm not so there can be a lot to sift through there. So yeah, so I would start with those. As I mentioned, you know, think about almost everything in your life that could be giving out scholarships. So if your parents have a bank, make sure that you look up that bank if they offer a scholarship. If they're part of a credit union, make sure that if they're part of a workers union, make sure that you are, you know, sort of like checking there. One of the things, and I think that television, one of the things that I have seen a lot over the last few years, and I think even when I was growing up, is that in some of the like Spanish speaking television channels like Telemundo and Univision, they offered a lot of these. So Ronald McDonald's House Charities was one. The Hacer Scholarship is what it's called, was one that was on Univision a lot. And so I actually applied to it because my mom said, well, McDonald's is giving scholarships. Why don't you look that one up? And so, you know, I went ahead and did. But yes, there are plenty of resources, and even please check the scholarship page on the PDF. So everyone should be receiving a PDF of my presentation afterwards, and you will see the links there. I also included a few links to some scholarships. So start there.
I mean, a great answer. That's like a plethora of places they can begin. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the other panelists. If you still have more questions, you can ask them at the end regarding the financial aid presentation that Fausto just gave to us. So we're going to bring on Michelle first. And Michelle is going to, and each of these panelists are going to spend a couple minutes talking about how they managed to pay for college, what scholarships and grants they applied for, how they worked it out through college, and just giving you kind of their experience as a whole. And so Michelle, it's all yours.
Sure thing. Thanks again, Nicole. So my situation was I went to SUNY Binghamton. So just as Fausto said, one really smart and economical way of actually planning towards college is to look into both state and like a SUNY and CUNY school. So I happen to go to a SUNY school. State and CUNY stands for city schools. So I actually did FAFSA, and I was also eligible for a TAP grant at that time. And that one also is because I went to a SUNY school, and it was also based on financial need. But my family was very keen on making sure that there was both my sister and I who were going to school back to back. So it was very much like, how do we plan and how do we help these two kids go into college at almost the same exact time? Because a lot of the times when you think about it, it's a huge financial burden, not only for us, but also for our parents if they want to help us. So how do we alleviate that concern for them? Entering college too, I actually did partake in more of I got a job on campus where I served as a student advisor for incoming freshmen. So just as Fausta had on his presentation, I was helping incoming freshmen find resources like within the campus and telling them, how they could utilize basically like how to better utilize the library. And then I was getting paid, which also helped towards my tuition. So it was very systematic. It's very hard though at first when you enter school just to figure out how much do things actually cost, because sometimes it might be the first time, experiencing like, okay, I have to buy this for myself, and like, oh my God, a textbook actually costs, if anyone uses textbooks these days, it costs $50 to $100. So you learn how to be economical. And I realized shortly then it's best if you could even talk to other people and find out what are other people doing in order to save a few dollars here and there. So one thing that I learned was, at the time, there was a Facebook group where people would exchange their textbooks. So that was one way for us to actually like save money on, classes we knew we were going to take next semester. But it's all about planning.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. We're getting some really good information here, so I hope everyone's taking notes. So next we're going to bring on Shivani. You're the next in my next to the in the list of boxes. If you want to come on and talk about what you did, what your experience was like.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole, and hi, everyone. I'm super glad to be here. So I went to NYU, and the first thing I want to echo Fausto and Michelle is definitely consider which schools you're applying to. So for instance, like I think among SUNY, or maybe it's CUNY, I don't know, Macaulay Honors, I think it's a fully paid program. They pay for housing plus tuition. So that's an amazing deal, and they're known for being excellent. So definitely look into the options and which schools can offer free rides. For instance, I went to NYU, but I was also accepted into Villanova, and I qualified. I applied for their presidential scholarship, which covered tuition and housing, and they even gave you living expenses like on the side if you wanted to pay. I think that's still are available. So if you guys are definitely like interested, it's called Villanova. It's in Pennsylvania. It's a great school, and that's something else to look into. But just to say, look for all your options. You can definitely Google which schools offer free rides or full rides. Sometimes they're not, publicized on their website, so you might have to dig around a little bit, but definitely do your research on that. But yeah, speaking about NYU, with the FAFSA, I do want to say apply early, but also just as a FYI, beware because there are so many scam websites out there that are trying to steal your information. So make sure you're using the correct link, which is the government website, and no other, fake link. And then work study jobs. I actually, what I did, I paid my student loans off the first week I graduated out of school because I didn't want to deal with interest. So I applied for a work study job way before the school even started. So freshman year, that summer, like in June or July, they actually released it that early, or at least NYU did. So as soon as you get your login credentials from your school, like go on that career website and start applying for schools, especially if you live in the same state. I went to school in New York, and then I was also living in New York at the time. So definitely apply early. I actually arranged my schedule so that I only took classes 2 days a week. So I took classes Monday and Wednesdays. I had an intense schedule, so from 9 to 5, but that freed up Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday to work. And I worked the maximum, I think, is 20 hours a week. So I worked 20 hours a week. So that's another thing to be aware of. Like you can always arrange your schedule so that you do have more time available to work on campus at these jobs. The next thing I want to say, like budgeting. When it comes to budgeting, I think NYU is one of the few schools where you can actually like pick which housing you want, and the housing costs are like explicitly noted on their websites. So look at all your expenses. So like calculate tuition, calculate housing, calculate, what the average price of groceries are if you're going to be cooking for yourself, and definitely leave some room to like go to the bars, hang out with your friends, and factor that all into your calculation so that you can determine how much aid you'll need. Sometimes like with FAFSA, they gave me way too many loans than I actually needed. So you don't take all your loans, like make sure you're taking the ones that you need, because they will give you, like, if you accept all of them, all of them will show up in your bank account. I also want to mention study abroad. I actually studied abroad in London, and I do want to say I think most schools cover financial aid if you travel abroad. So if you're interested in studying in a different country, don't let financial aid hold you back. Like chances are, if you go to a large school, financial aid will transfer, so you can actually like study in a different country for the same price that you would in your home country. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Rico now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Shavani. It seems like there's a consistent theme of prepare, research, plan ahead, just kind of, use some very creative tactics that they've named already. So yeah, that's just a small summary. And now we have Rico who's going to speak next. After Rico, we're going to open up the Q&A section. So again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to add into the Q&A. We don't require that you come on screen, so you can always ask anonymously. And Rico, take it away from here.
Good evening, everybody. So one thing I was doing to the side, it's actually funny Nicole just mentioned it. I was marking down every time somebody said planning, because that was like the first thing that came to mind, and everybody talked about planning because it's so crucial to this process. So I was on both sides of the coin. So undergrad, I got a full ride. They pay for room, board, living expenses. I didn't pay a cent undergrad. But then for law school, I ended up finishing with maybe 170,000 in like loans. So I've been on both sides of the spectrum, and planning helped in both aspects. I mean, even if it's a loose plan, having a plan going in of what you expect to get out of this and how you expect to handle it is always important. Ever since I can remember as a kid, I said I was going to go to somebody's like college on a full ride. And just so happens that, life made that possible for me. It was weird. It was actually one of those presidential scholarships, but it was for Virginia Tech. Went to Virginia Tech undergrad. The very first year they did it was the year I went to the school. So I like to say the universe just made that happen for me. But planning. One thing, I guess, before I talk about like my student loans experience, one thing I will say about the scholarships and just the scholarships in general, and just to echo what was talked about earlier. The extra mile is no one's really on that road. When you really think about how many people are applying for these scholarships, it's a ridiculously low number. It's probably a lot less than you think. I've given a scholarship away at my old high school for the past 3 years. Last year, I give 2 scholarships a year. You know how many people applied last year? It was 2 people. And it's because everybody assumes that everybody's applying and no one ends up applying. It's like it's actually a psychology term for it, but that's neither here nor there. But like no one's applying. I have friends that do scholarships. Nobody's really applying for these scholarships. So you end up having this very small pool of people, and you get to know them well. And it's also, so just going on that, my scholarship, it's literally, I require like, send me less than the 500-word essay. You can honestly send the essay that you sent to the school that you apply to, because I really just want to know who you are. And the other people who I know who have similar scholarships, that's literally what it is. And people are leaving free money on the table because they assume that other people are applying for it. And then also, especially in these times, like people want to give more. Like the people who apply for my scholarship this year, it doesn't close until June, but I'm gonna give the winners laptops as well on top of the scholarship, just because like I think 2021 has just been a rough time period. And then I knew I needed a laptop going to school. They don't know about it yet, but like there's also not a lot of people applying for these scholarships. So I just wanted to note that. I think everybody kind of talked a lot about the preparation and planning process. And I never paid back. I didn't pay back my student loans within a week. That is a record. But I can talk about that, the process. So like I finished law school in 2016 with $170,000 worth of like student loan debt. But I was planning for that when I went in. And then also I just asked around. I asked, okay, how much money could I get? So I reduced that number because it could have been upwards of 300,000. So just talking to the administration, okay, reducing this number. How do I get this down? Getting grants, getting scholarships, getting better deals. So paying it back, a new coming out, $170,000. Got to pay this back somehow. What's the smart way? A lot of people want to pay it back really fast. I don't recommend paying your loan back fast. I don't recommend paying back slow. I think you set your own pace. I just recommend being smart about it. So don't pay a ridiculously high interest rate. If you get out of college and you say, okay, this is my plan, I'm going to the private sector, or this is my plan, figure out that plan and then move your loan around in the way that best serves you. I got to a point, but by the end of my loan, I was paying an interest rate that was 0.9%, because I realized, okay, the loan isn't the issue, it's the interest payment. I'm going to have to pay this back at some point anyway. So I don't want to pay thousands and thousands of interest. Let me get this down as low as possible. And I think that was the strategy that I tell everybody I talk to now. Just get your interest rate down low, whether you pay it off now or whether you pay it off later. It's up to you, but you can pay that off. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take an insurmountable amount of time if you plan and you plan out like your next move. So that was just, that's so hearing what everybody said, that was like one thing I just really wanted to echo, the planning process.
Wow, that we have a lot of variety of experiences here with our panelists, and so there's a lot of different routes that you can consider. So thank you, each one of you, for sharing that information. We're going to go into the Q&A section, which is one of my favorite parts. And so give me 1 second. Looks like, let's see. Okay, so we have an anonymous question that just came in. Would it be, and so what we can do for the panelists, if you want to answer this question, there is a raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. Just go ahead and raise your hand and then I'll call on you. If you don't feel like answering it, that's okay too. So would it be better to go to a more prestigious college, even if it means taking out more debts? This is a great question. Who wants to take this one?
This is I think this is a really, really great question. I could take my hand down. So I think it depends on how much more prestigious. If it's still comparable, maybe, but also another point that I wanted to bring up that slipped my mind, a function of if you have to take out loans for a school and you need to take out loans, a thing that I did for law schools, you look at what the alumni do. You look at what you can reasonably expect to make when you finish, because you don't want to graduate, get a degree, and you're just stuck drowning in debt. So if the school is going to cost you $500,000, but you aren't going to reasonably make $500,000 in the next 20 years based on what previous alumni have done, then maybe you don't go to that school, because that's going to set you up for failure in terms of paying back your loans. But prestige is important. I've known people who did very, very well without a college degree at all. I've known people who've done well from a very less prestigious school. So it's more about you and yourself. But if the more prestigious school is going to set you up with an opportunity or it's going to get you aligned with what you want to do, sure, consider it. But also just focus on, I don't want to take out more debt than my degree is going to be worth.
Good answer. Thank you. And then we have Fausto, and then Shivani can come after Fausto.
I'll go ahead and echo that, and I'll say that I understand the use of the word prestige, but I think that one of the things that it's best to consider is actually the best fit. So your best fit college. So, let's say, just for example, let's say your uncle works at the admissions office at Harvard and you happen to get to Harvard, but, the financial aid is a whole bunch of loans. And, you probably, would have done better at a smaller school setting, like that's something to sort of weigh and something to keep in mind, that really what you want is best fit. And best fit means culturally, best fit means academically, best fit means financially as well. There were, I guess some, like, as I mentioned before, the bigger schools generally have more funding. That doesn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be there. It's wherever is best for you and your family.
Awesome. And then Shivani, if you want to go ahead and answer this question, and then we'll take the next one afterwards.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on, first of all, what package you receive from each school, but then also, like, what are your plans for later on in life? I know most people, including myself, didn't know what I wanted to do in college, but if you have an idea and you're going to go to med school, you're going to go to law school, you're going to go somewhere else, you're going to do some kind of postgraduate program, then I think that you should factor that into your decision, because, all of that, you'll have to take out loans for grad school then. And I think grad school is like less forgiving with financial aid. So definitely take those considerations into play. And then also to Fausto's point, It depends on what you want from the school. Like with a smaller school, I think people are quick to discredit it because they have less prestige, but having a smaller environment does mean that there are more leadership opportunities available to you on campus. You're able to get involved, you're able to be on boards, you're able to be on leadership councils, really take an initiative. But on the flip side, like at a larger school, they have a better network, right? Like if you know you want to be in finance, then go to a finance-driven school. Go to a school that has like the network, because when senior year in college comes around, you know that there's going to be scouting agencies on campus, recruiting for companies that you might want to work at one day. So all of those are considerations that you should factor in. And then also, like what kind of personality do you have? Like, do you want to be in a diverse setting where like, you know, you have exposure to people all around the universe, and you might all around the world, not the universe, all around the world. But you know, who do you want to work with? What type of environment do you want to be in? I think that matters a lot, and should definitely be weighed against something like cost.
Thank you so much, Shivani. So we're going to go on to the next question. It's also anonymous. If I get financial aid for my first year of college, do I have to reapply every year? And could it be a different amount each year of college? Who wants to take this one? I see Fausto nodding his head like, uh-huh. Go ahead.
Yes, you reapply for aid every single year. You have to complete your FAFSA every single year. Generally, most families' financial situations don't really change. But again, you may have that rich uncle that won the lottery, you know, last year. And so this year you don't have to worry about tuition. That doesn't happen very often. So yes, make sure that you reapply, that you reapply early. I think my video is being a little, I don't know if you can hear me, but that you make sure that you reapply, thank you, that you reapply early so that you are getting as much financial aid possible before it runs out. And so one of the things to ask during your high school senior year after you receive your financial aid packages is how many of those, you know, sort of like awards, components of your awards, so scholarships, loans, grants are renewable for the 4 years, right? So there are some schools that do this, right? That will, your first year, it looks like you're getting so much money. But what you didn't ask is that $5,000 or $10,000 scholarship was not renewable for all 4 years. And so then you'll find yourself in a situation where you'll have to supplement that $10,000 with something else. And generally you're in college, you're incredibly busy. You may not have time to apply for scholarships. So that generally just turns out being loans. And, you know, I would try to avoid that.
So before I bring on Shivani, I'm gonna also give a little answer on that side of things. Yes, to echo Fausto, you do have to apply every single year. I learned something new when I went back to school, which was if your income, like Fausto said, most financial situations don't change, but some do. So if you end up making less, they won't know that you're making less unless you tell them that you are. So I had a little different situation where I worked in finance, making a high amount of income, quit that, went back to school, and they wouldn't give me financial aid because they were going based off my past taxes, which show I made more. So what I did was I proved that I was no longer making that amount. I was making less, and I was able to get a zero financial aid offer to the full Pell Grant, the full financial aid support of the school. So I just want to make sure, you know, if your parents lose their jobs, you know, your first year of college, when you reapply for your FAFSA, they're not gonna go based off your parents' most recent income. They're gonna go off the previous year. So if a situation happens like that, make sure you go to the financial aid office and says, no, my parents' income has significantly decreased and I need to, and they have to manually fix that number. The school does, not FAFSA. So I think that was a really important lesson for me to learn, because I almost took out loans to pay for that whole year. And because they were able to correct it, I didn't. So there's a good lesson there. And then Shivani, you can go ahead and
Yeah, I definitely want to echo what Fausto said about making sure you ask about what types of grants and scholarships you're receiving. I remember I received one scholarship that had requirements, and one of the requirements was you have to maintain a 3.65 GPA in order for it to renew every semester. And I remember there was one semester I was taking organic chemistry. My grade like tanked in that class. I was just like on the verge of not getting that grade point average. And I think it might have been like a point below. I don't even know. But I remember having to like appeal and say like, this is what happened this semester. Can I please keep my scholarship? And usually they're amenable and they're like, yeah, it's fine. Let's see how you do the following semester. But that's just to say that the scholarships that you do receive, they're not promised, and they might have requirements that you might have to inquire about and make sure you're on top of that every semester. Some renew annually and some renew on a semester basis. So be clear about that.
And Michelle, if you want to go ahead and take on that question too.
Yeah, I think that the idea of making sure that you're meeting those deadlines and knowing what you have to have prepared before you even fill out the application. I mean, maybe some of you have never heard of what a 1040 is or a W-2, but it's also really important to have that dialogue with, say, your parents and say, hey, do you guys have this available on hand if I need it in 2 months? Or do you need to talk to someone, like if they have an accountant, like can you guys get this on time for me to input it? Especially, I know that if you're in like a family where maybe English is not the first language, you're going to need to have, unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit harder work to like understand what is it that they're asking for. And some of it might be new to you and you're going to ask your counselor for more help. So don't, feel comfortable asking for help because, all of these resources are available for you. But unfortunately, it is a little bit daunting, especially if it's the first time you're doing it or your family's doing it. So give yourself patience and grace. And on the note of like looking at scholarships and grants, one thing I realized also that helped me throughout paying for college was taking AP classes helped me complete a lot of the classes my freshman year so that I actually was in sophomore standing by the time I entered college. And even though those AP classes may have cost me $80, I got college credit essentially. So that actually saved me on my college tuition later on. So if you're given the opportunity to take an AP class, I highly, highly recommend it. Even if it's going to be very challenging for you, if you end up doing well, some colleges do take it and it's going to be super advantageous for you without realizing it.
Amazing. So we're going to take one last question and then we're going to wrap up. Okay. So this also comes anonymous. How many hours is good to work during the semester? What if I'm falling behind on my schoolwork because of the work hours? How do you find a good balance? That's a tricky one. I definitely worked almost full time throughout my 4 years. Anyone want to take this question? Should I take it first? Yes. Consensus. So I worked full time in my first 2 years of college. I still don't know how I managed that. I think I cried a few nights because it was extremely stressful. I do want to say that you being here today and getting this information on how you can pay to college can help prevent you from being put in this type of situation. I applied for my FAFSA, but I didn't get any scholarships because I just didn't think to apply, or no one said, hey, you should apply to this because it will cover your cost. So in retrospect, if I had prepared and planned ahead of time, as we're talking about today, and applied for certain scholarships, I probably wouldn't have needed to work as many hours as I did. So I would say, look, my answer would be to fall back on, if you have to work, which is the case for some people, then time management and prioritize. You may have to cut back on social events to prioritize your work, to prioritize your schoolwork when you're not working. And that might be challenging because you may want to decompress from school, decompress from work. But you'll have to, just time management, figure out, okay, like I believe Shivani said earlier, she scheduled classes on 2 days so that way she can work 3 other days and then still have 2 more days out of the week to do her schoolwork and to, maybe decompress for an hour or so. But I think that from my personal experience is, take the advice of everyone on here and apply for as many scholarships as possible so you can alleviate the financial stress and you don't have to work their hours. If you have to work, time management and sacrificing some of your social life in order to not fall behind on your schoolwork, which would compromise the whole reason why you're in school to begin with. And so, yeah, I would say those 3 things. Anybody else? Oh, Shivani has, and Fausto has to have that. And Rico. Okay. So we're going to start in order as I see you on my screen because I didn't see when you raised your hand, and we only have a couple more minutes left. So Fausto, if you want to go ahead, go first.
Sure, thank you. So keep in mind that if you have a work-study job, that is going to be capped or limited to a certain number of hours. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I think it's something like 20, maybe actually even less per week. Some work-study jobs actually may not even give you that many hours. Time management is incredibly important. I know that sounds like a ridiculous word and everyone has been throwing around for the last couple of years, but really what that means is that if you know that you have 2 hours to in between your last class and then your next class, then you need to make sure that you're not necessarily taking a nap back in your dorm. Make sure that you're studying, make sure that you're completing whatever homework or whatever assignment you can do so there. And then one last sort of point is there are scholarships for everyone. So don't think that you have to be the A+ student and the valedictorian to apply for certain scholarships. There are literally scholarships for everyone, for all types of students, with different requirements, for different interests, again, from the A+ student to, someone with a hobby for underwater basket weaving or whatever, right? Like literally there are people, even private citizens, who will give scholarships, in addition to the corporations, nonprofits, and other organizations.
Shivani, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I also want to say one good thing. So when you're in college, you have several options to work. 2 of my personal favorites, one is the work study job. And I say that because usually staff on campus are much nicer and they are understanding about the situation you're in and how much work you have to do. So if you do have downtime at your work study job or you're not exactly always so busy, they are open to you doing work while you're working. So you can get some of your homework out of the way and some of your studying out of the way. So you can take advantage of that. And then also I want to say take advantage of your weekends. Usually Saturday and Sunday mornings are pretty dead on campus. So take advantage, do your work then, because at night then you can go out with your friends. So really time management, like Fausto said, is really key. Take advantage of the moments where you have time for yourself and you're not pressured by your friends to hang out. And take advantage of those 1 or 2 hour breaks in between classes. You can get a surprising amount of work done in those 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah, definitely. And then Rico, if you want to go to answer your question, and then we're going to close it out to the next one. So Rico.
Okay, and I'll try to be really quick. First, I'll just echo everything that everybody says, and definitely apply to scholarships because hopefully you can avoid needing to work while you're in school. One thing I do want to emphasize is that if you can work on campus, and then also second, and over communicate. If you got to work, communicate to your boss. Communicate to your teachers, communicate to your peers, communicate and tell them what's going on in your life so people understand, because people would help you if they know what you're dealing with. And the reason why I said work on campus and also communicate is because I can't speak for everybody's college experience, but the best thing I got from college is relationships. That's the main thing I carry with me right now. Those relationships I couldn't tell you what I learned in one of my classes I took my sophomore. I have no idea. I don't remember the name of those classes, but I remember the networks and the people, and those networks and those people are still things people I still talk to today, and then we still help each other propel each other in our careers. So work on campus, communicate, build those relationships, because that's so important.
Much, Rico. I mean, all the information that we received today was so valuable. I hope everyone took notes. But if you didn't get to ask your question, you can go ahead and send me follow-up questions. So I just put my email in the chat. You can email me at nserrato@scholarshipfund.org if you have a question for me, or if you have a question for any of the panelists specifically. Please reach out to us. We are more than happy to be a resource and help you through this next step in this journey that you're going to be going on. Before we head out, I'd love to take a screenshot with our panelists. So if we can all give a big cheese. And 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to take it. Hold on. There we go. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, there we go. You all heard that little snap, right? Alrighty, so thank you so much to the panelists who gave their time today. We appreciate it. Don't forget, we will be sending Fausto's presentation out, which has so much valuable information. And some of you might notice I changed my screen here to provide you with our social media accounts. So I am the manager of our social media accounts for CSF. So please follow us on our Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Please, we'd love to connect with you. We are constantly posting stories, sharing with you what's going on, what events are happening, what families, other family stories. And so, yeah, we'll see you on there. So make sure to write those down, you two YLs and president councils. And last but not least, look out for your email, at your emails. Sorry, that sentence went horribly. But anyways, we're going to be sending more invites out. We have a few more events this summer, and we're excited to bring those to you. So make sure you look out for an email from CSF. It's going to happen every couple of weeks for the remaining of the summer. But with that being said, again, I want to say a huge thank you to Fausto, to Rico, to Shivani, to Michelle. Thank you so much for volunteering your time. Thank you to the parents and CSF alumni who are on here and joined us today. And we'll see you next time.